What's up, everybody? Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week. We got final specs finally for the 2024 Mustang. We also have a confirmation of a next generation Elantra N coming, as well as talk about a Mustang Mach-E Coupe and a bunch of other interesting stuff. So definitely stay tuned for the whole weekly update here. Lots of exciting stuff to go over. Also, if I sound a little off, I do have a cold this week, so I apologize if my voice isn't 100% up to par. But anyway, getting into the first news story here. Ford this week has revealed all the power numbers finally for the 2024 Mustang, along with also detailing the changes to the engines. And thankfully the rumors were wrong. There was rumors I talked about a few weeks ago saying it would only get like 450 horsepower and just be a carryover, but it sounds like it will end up getting more power after all. They officially confirmed all the power numbers for all the versions of the Mustang here. So first, I'll start with the GT. So it's powered by a 4th generation 5-liter Coyote V8 that does up to 486 horsepower. There's a catch there. And 418 pound-feet of torque if you get it with the active exhaust system. If you get it without the active exhaust system, it'll do 480 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. But that 480 horsepower is, totally what we expected, at least what I expected. Typically with, the previous generation, you get the more enhanced version of that engine and you carry that over into the new, generation. But it's a little more than that, but it just, at least as far as power goes, it matches the Bullet and the Mach-1 for this new generation regular GT. And then, goes even a few beyond that if you get the active exhaust now. So pretty solid as far as that rating goes here, but it is kind of strange though. Ford, they continue to really emphasize that this is all new, even though it's not all new, and it still irks me. But anyway, they also had an interesting claim here where they claim it's the most standard torque ever at 415 pound-feet of torque. And so I don't know if maybe they're adjusting the old 420 pound-feet of torque rating that they previously had. That got adjusted in 2022 down to 410 pound-feet along with a horsepower drop. But I believe that was due to new emissions stuff. I didn't think that retroactively meant that all old versions of the Mustang had less power, because my Bullet has 420 pound-feet of torque. This has less. So I don't know why they have to brag about having the most standard torque ever. But regardless, that's what they're saying here. But as far as the bump in horsepower, that comes thanks to a new dual intake, which is, beyond just the GT350 intake manifold that the Bullets and stuff have. This is, a completely new design here with this dual intake, dual throttle bodies, along with an upgraded oil pan, they say, and structural improvements for better durability. They say those dual throttle bodies also increase responsiveness, and so it'll be interesting to, try out eventually and see how it does. Moving on to the dark horse here, it managed to hit its 500 horsepower target that they were planning, officially doing 500 horsepower even, and still does 418 pound-feet of torque. So no bump in torque, only the extra 14 horsepower here. But and so to achieve that extra 14 horsepower and increased track durability when operating close to the 7,500 RPM red line that it still has, it gets a uniquely balanced crankshaft, stronger camshafts, and forged piston connecting rods that were first introduced in the GT500. And lastly, moving on to the EcoBoost here, they're claiming that the 2.3-liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder is an all-new engine from the ground up. And I'm inclined to believe them. It's interesting they didn't change the displacement, but it's going to have Ford's new modular power cylinder engine architecture. It has a new bore-to-stroke ratio, and it now has port and direct fuel injection, thankfully. The previous generation, or current generation, I guess you can still say, that still had just direct injection for that EcoBoost. Wasn't great from a durability standpoint, because it can get gunked up with the carbon buildup and stuff. Don't have to worry about that now on the EcoBoost here for the new version, which honestly would convince me to swap into the new EcoBoost just for that alone. It also now has variable cam timing, integrated exhaust gas recirculation, and a twin-scroll turbo. And this all results, though, in 315 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, which is 5 more horsepower than the old version and the same amount of torque as the old motor, which, for a longevity standpoint, I'm very happy they added the dual injection, but this is a lot of work to go to for basically no gains. Especially on a turbo motor, you just breathe on that thing and it's going to have more power. A quick little flash that could have, been way more powerful. So I don't know why they do all these extra durability things for just, 5 more horsepower. They do say it's going to be, they're planning on it getting 2 mpg better on the highway and 1 better combined. And that's also, you're getting 1 mpg better from a brand new engine that has all these extensive, changes to it. I'm just a little underwhelmed, I guess, with the EcoBoost, and especially considering they did raise the bar a good bit there with the GT. There's more breathing room there to make the EcoBoost, I think, a little more powerful than they did. So, I'm not sure what the deal is with that, but anyway, still a little improvement nonetheless. And so that's all the news as far as the 2024 Mustangs here so far. And basically that answers all of our questions now about it for the most part. The last question we have here is pricing. That'll probably come closer to its on sale date, which is going to be summer of 2023. And so yeah, but I think, a good amount of power. I'm really glad they managed to actually bump the power, by a good amount, and, should certainly help it feel next generation with a little bit of extra power there, in addition to the extra features and styling and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so very good to see that. And great news for fans of gas-powered Hyundai N models here this week, with former boss and now the executive technical advisor, Albert Bierman, confirming to Australian website Car Expert this past weekend about how there's going to be an Elantra N for a next generation version. So the Elantra N is called the i30N sedan over there in Australia, and he confirmed the i30N is quite safe, at least the sedan version, so we will see the next generation car with a new petrol engine, as it's already in our long-range plans. But unfortunately for those in Europe, it sounds like the future of their gas-powered Ns isn't going to be very promising, since the hatchback version of the i30N was developed mainly for Europe. And so Bierman explained, other markets like Europe are dreaming, and there's a good chance there will be no further combustion engine N cars in some markets with Euro 7 regulations looming. But he added that the i20N engine, which we don't get here in the States, that's the smaller little N, the 1.6, he says, will survive. We use this engine in tons of applications, as you know. The 2-liter will basically phase out the turbo version sooner or later, but I think we have a nice replacement available. Not to all markets maybe, but with the 2.5 turbo, I think we can still come up with some nice powerful N cars. So he's suggesting here next generation Elantra N could get a big boost in power if it's going to go to the 2.5 liter motor, which currently we've only seen basically in, the Sonata N line and the K5 GT. I've driven both of those, had them for a week. Very beastly motor, honestly, that thing. It really feels punchy and strong. And even in the Sonata, it's just like a wheel spin monster. I had it in the middle of last winter, and that thing just wanted to desperately spin the tires at every opportunity. So it's an animal. And so, putting that in the Elantra, even a next-gen version, is going to be wild. Thankfully, that'll have, limited slip diff and stuff, which the Sonata does not have. But that's going to be an impressive package if that's what they're planning on doing, which he kind of is hinting that that's kind of the way they're going to go with that. And so some other stuff that he said here is that as far as electric Ns go, we do know the Ioniq 5N is going to be coming here in 2023, and I'll talk about that more in a minute here. But as far as other electric Ns go, he says if we're talking EVs, then we could very well see an all-electric i30N in a hatch body with our B and C segment plans, but it might take some time to get there to get it right. So they don't want to rush some type of, electric N as far as that thing goes. If it's going to be a smaller thing, obviously a lot less capable than the Ioniq 5N. But so for those of you in Europe, definitely enjoy your i30N hatches while you can, because it sounds like they're not going to stick around much longer. But at least for us here in North America, it sounds like, if you're a fan of the Elantra N, it will stick around for another generation, which is going to be kind of rare, because I don't really think there's any other manufacturers that have guaranteed any kind of next generation performance gas-powered models. I'm even going to be talking about the Civic Type R in a second here, and that's another one that, the future's uncertain as far as what they're going to do with that. But again, I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, very interesting to, get that guarantee. It's awesome that he's also open enough to be like, yep, we're doing another one. And instead of having some kind of weird teaser thing or, keeping people up in the air and guessing, he's like, yep, we're going to be doing it. And that's great. But as far as the Ioniq 5N is concerned here, we do have some interesting new details this week, thanks again to that same interview that Car Expert did with Albert Bierman. So some of these things have been hinted at in the past, and we've kind of heard about some of this stuff and talked about it in the past, but I don't think we've had any of this stuff officially confirmed as being in the production version of the Ioniq 5N here until now. And again, Albert Bierman, just being in a very sharing mood, decided to lay it all out here. So while it sounds like, most of the mechanical components will be shared with the EV6 GT, most likely, Hyundai will be doing more creative things to kind of make it feel a little more different than the EV6 and make it a more unique and exhilarating experience here. So They're planning to make it feel more like a gas car, primarily with sounds, vibrations, and shifting. So Bierman said the idea is to provide the same jolt and downshift vibrations you experience in our ICE N cars. And later said the idea is to come pretty close to the feel and sound of the DCT in the i30N hatch. So basically Elantra N or Veloster N, DCT, like that kind of a jolt in the electric Ioniq 5N. And they're talking about doing like force feedback kind of stuff in the vehicle. I'm not sure, if it'll be subtle or pretty pronounced or what, but they've been doing pretty good things with, video game stuff to make those vibrations very realistic and convincing. So, I think it's really cool. And again, this is something no one else has done yet. And I really respect Hyundai for being bold and just trying these new things. It might seem super gimmicky and terrible to most people, but I'm personally like hearing all these things. I'm going to get to all the other things here in a second, but hearing all these things, like this is one of the cars I'm most excited to review in 2023 because it's just going to be like so wild and it's this like new pioneering thing. They'll be like, does it suck or is it actually awesome? We'll have to see. But so gonna have vibrations, pretty wild, and I think it's promising if they can make it convincing. He also said it'll get a virtual grin shift that uses a button on the steering wheel, just like on the N grin shift steering wheel button you have in the Elantra N DCT and the Veloster N DCT. And so in the Ioniq 5, this button will be put the car into a virtual shift mode to make it feel like it's changing gears. And it's gonna have paddle shifters to do that. So that's how you're gonna be changing the gears there, or the virtual gears, I guess. It'll also have N Sound Plus, which will provide gas-inspired sounds, including one that sounds like it's bouncing off a rev limiter, and even crackling and popping sounds and things like that, which, again, I think if they make it convincing, could be really cool. He also said that there's going to be future over-the-air updates that'll bring even more sound options, and that the owners can actually add their own noises as well somehow. He didn't detail how you do that or what the limitations are for that. But that could be super cool, whether it's just some kind of file you download or if you can just literally pick any MP3 file or something like that and, try and work it out, or even if there's an aftermarket scene for that kind of thing where, people develop and sell, a sound pack of, whatever matches whatever speeds or throttle, mapping for those sounds, things like that. It could be, a whole new flourishing little aftermarket niche, in my opinion. And I think that could be really cool. But anyway, beyond that here, he also said it's going to have a drift mode, lastly, just like the GV60 does. But I'm really excited to drive this thing next year. I think it's going to be really, really cool. I think they said Ioniq 5N should be coming in the first half of 2023. So we'll hopefully get some info on that here, fairly soon. But very, very interesting to hear all of that. And thanks to Mr. Bierman for being so open about, just putting it all out there. But it sounds like Hyundai and Volkswagen won't be the only ones pursuing hot hatches in an electric era here. So in a recent interview Autocar did with the Honda Civic Type R's lead engineer, he revealed that without Type R there is no Honda, and that Honda strongly believes that driving pleasure is the core essence of private and personal mobility. And he also added that while it's very difficult to think about such a sports model in these boundaries of future emissions regulations, Honda sees it only as new challenges to provide our customers the joy of driving. And he said that it could still earn the Type R badge as long as it was still fun to drive, because that's the hallmark thing for them here. So regardless of what's powering it, if they can make it fun, it'll be worthy of the Type R badge in their mind. And so obviously this generation of the Civic Type R has just debuted, so they have a long time to go before they got to worry about what they're going to do with the next generation version. And it's going to be a long ways off, hopefully. So we'll see. And there's talks that maybe there could be a hybrid version first before they go fully electric too. So we'll see what ends up happening down the road for the Type R. But it's just good to know that regardless of what happens, even if we're talking 20 years down the road, there will hopefully be a Type R, and it'll still be fun to drive. And that's all that matters, in my opinion. And so great to hear that. Another interesting report, though, here. Auto Forecast Solutions, which is a credible, big-time forecasting agency here. They just provided some credible new details here about the Mustang Mach-E and a Coupe version that's coming, complete with platform and vehicle codes here for it. So seems pretty legit. They have some very, high up inside intel. They can get project codes and all that kind of stuff. And so first, they claim that the next generation GE 2.1 version of the Mach-E will supposedly begin production in July of 2026 for the 2027 model year. Along with it, there will supposedly be a Mach-E Coupe that debuts at the same time, according to their intel. And it notes that they'll also be going to be built at the same factory in Mexico that builds the regular Mach-E. And that's about all the info we have here. And so Clearly these days coupe can mean basically anything. It's put on four-door sedans, four-door SUVs, still on two doors as well. So as far as what they end up doing remains to be seen with that. Now, there's some people that are speculating that this could, be replacing the seventh generation Mustang. And so, the 2027 model year is maybe when we'll start to, see this transition to an electric two-door Mustang. But I don't think that that's likely, and I think the more likely thing is that it will probably just end up being a coupier version of the Mach-E, even though the Mach-E already kind of has a coupe-like kind of silhouette there as far as coupe SUVs go, by not having boxy back end basically. As far as a coupe version goes, it could go a couple different ways. We just talked last week about how the Camaro is going to be branching out into this electric SUV, and that there will be a two-door and a four-door version supposedly of that. So if they're doing a two-door Camaro electric SUV, sometime off in the late 2020s, maybe Ford's planning on doing a two-door Mach-E SUV as well. And it could be that, could be the coupier four-door thing, or it could still just be, some type of thing either sold alongside the, seventh generation Mustang, or actually replacing it or starting to replace it, because there is talks that this seventh gen Mustang will only last for about 5 years or so, and around 2028 or so is when you can start to expect to see, that phased out and a fully electric two-door coupe Mustang, come and take its place. But I don't think that this is what this is describing, because first off, they also still call it the Mach-E. I don't think Ford would abandon the straight-up Mustang branding. I think that they'll always have just a regular Mustang, even if it is electric. So I don't think they'd call it the Mach-E Coupe. I also think that, since they're building this thing in Mexico, this coupe, that it's most likely very closely related to the Mach-E, and it's not... because they've always built the regular two-door Mustangs at Flat Rock for a long time here. I would assume that they're going to try and keep owning them at Flat Rock, even if they do go electric down the road. But I guess that's, up in the air. But, just for those reasons, I don't think this is describing what will be the replacement for the 7th generation Mustang. I don't think so, but we'll have to wait and see. The last little thing that's kind of interesting, though, about this report is that according to Auto Forecast Solutions, even though the Coupe and the regular Mach-E will both start production in July of 2026, the Coupe is supposedly scheduled to end production 2 years sooner than the regular version, ending in 2031 instead of 2033 for some reason. I'm not sure why. It seems kind of strange, unless this is kind of supposed to be a gateway drug for some people, and maybe they're going to do a two-door SUV electric Mach-E, and then maybe 2031 is whenever it's like, hey, okay, there's no need for the two-door one anymore because we have a two-door low, coupe Mustang that's electric by that point, and maybe they are keeping the 7th generation around longer than 2028 or 2030. I don't know, we'll have to see, but anyway, very interesting to hear all that. And for some other electrified American icon news here, the 2024 Corvette E-Ray has leaked out early here, thanks to the Corvette blogger website that discovered the car in the configurator somehow. And so it shows off styling here that borrows body panels from the Z06, except that they're painted body color here in this, so a little less contrast there. And there's exhaust at the corners, also instead of in the center like on the Z06 too. And it's legit as well, with a GM spokesperson telling Corvette blogger, looks like the holidays came early for a few astute Corvette fans. Stay tuned for more. And I love that. I love the GM just like, yep, you caught us. Like, and instead of trying to play games or spin it or just say no comment, laying into it, making it fun and saying, yeah, this is totally legit. Like, we're not going to try and dance around it. I love that. And so cool that this is, really the E-Ray, where it's confirmed and it is happening for sure. And so the rumors, suggest, we don't have any official info yet, but the rumors have suggested previously that it'll combine the regular C8 6.2 liter V8 with a hybrid system that includes an electric front axle, similar to like what the Acura NSX did, which will make it the first all-wheel drive Corvette. And it's rumored to do around 650 horsepower, and according to Autoblog, it's not supposed to officially debut here until the summer of 2023. And lastly, the configurator here also showed off some color changes, with Elkhart Lake Blue, Caffeine Metallic, Ceramic Matrix Gray, and White Pearl going away and being replaced by 3 new colors, Riptide Blue Metallic, Cacti, and Sea Wolf Gray Tricoat. There's also a new interior color called Artemis that appears to be like a very dark greenish gray. And so anyway, very cool to see all that, and I'm excited to see more info on the E-Ray here, as well as like actual Corvette buyers' reaction to this. If this is something that Corvette buyers actually want, I don't know. Obviously, there's maybe a tiny niche for people that actually want to drive their all-wheel drive Corvette in the snow or something like that. And maybe for drag racers, having the grip, would be better than like a Z06 or something. But aside from that, I don't know. Like, it's a cool idea, but is anyone actually going to buy it? The idea wasn't super hot in the NSX, so, I don't know. We'll have to see. I'll be very curious to follow that one, but cool to hear that. Mazda this week has teased the 2024 CX-90 that they say will make its world debut in January and will be available nationwide as Mazda's first plug-in hybrid in the US here. And it's going to be a powertrain called eSky Active. And they say it's tuned specifically for the North American market and will maintain the responsiveness, performance, and driving dynamics that define Mazda vehicles. And while they say it also will be providing customers with the best of both worlds in terms of performance and efficiency. And that's all they're saying for now, but they do show off here a close-up shot of the back end, which definitely has a very BMW-inspired look to that taillight there. And a previous teaser also showed off the faux fender vent that said inline 6, and based on what we've seen with the European CX-60 that launched earlier this year on the same platform, chances are it'll be a rear-wheel drive-based all-wheel drive setup, and in that plug-in hybrid version, it does 323 horsepower. So we'll see if that changes for the CX-90, and this is probably going to be a little bit larger, and also for North American market, if they're going to bump the power or lower the power or whatever, we'll have to see. But at least we don't have long to wait for that. And so anyway, cool to see that. McLaren is still considering doing a crossover, according to McLaren's director of product strategy, who talked to Automotive News in an interview here. So he said, the most important thing is to provide a vehicle that has more space or ability for a McLaren customer to share the experience with more people. How high riding it is, whether it's a crossover, that's to be decided, and in fact, nothing is set at this point. And then he added that if we're going to do anything, whether it's this type of product or any other type of product, the test for us is, can we accurately reflect the DNA of McLaren? That's the bit you need to spend the time upfront thinking about and proving out. So it sounds like whatever it is they're working on, they're not very far along if they haven't even agreed on what type of body style it's going to have or what form it's going to take. And it's kind of surprising they're not rushing this to market, considering McLaren is not doing well financially. I think they said they had to sell a bunch of their heritage vehicles in order to finance the Artura launch and stuff. They're not doing well. So you would think that this would be priority number one, figure this out as fast as humanly possible and get this thing sold to help out their finances. Look at how Aston Martin's been helped greatly by DBX sales, and so why McLaren hasn't done this sooner and why they're still dragging their feet on this thing. It sounds like, yes, McLaren DNA, whatever, it's still gonna have the McLaren badge, and I get that they don't want to just sell out, and that's respectable, but if your back's up against the wall here, do something quick, because I'd rather them have a sellout McLaren SUV that's just a compromised vehicle, because an SUV is going to always be a compromise. Like the Ferrari Purosangue is not as good as an 812 Superfast. It's not, but that's okay. So I don't see why they need to be such sticklers on this, especially considering their situation. Push something out fast and help the company so that you can survive long enough to make awesome sports cars and worry about your DNA and all that stuff. They're not gonna have DNA to worry about if they can't stick around. I don't know how bad their situation truly is, but it sounds like it's not great. So anyway, we'll see what happens, but best of luck to them while they try and figure out what they want to do with this people mover thing. But yeah, best of luck to them. Anyway, moving on here. Bearer Post this week discovered documents that reveal that the new M3 CS is scheduled to begin production in March of 2023, and that it will actually be coming to the United States, which hasn't been a guarantee in the past. There's actually rumors that it wasn't going to come to the United States, but it sounds like it will with these new documents. And they say it's going to have the same engine that debuted this year in the M4 CSL, meaning a 543 horsepower version of the 3-liter twin-turbo inline 6. Unlike the rear-wheel drive CSL, though, the documents suggest the CS will be all-wheel drive only. And if it is all-wheel drive only, that means it'll be automatic only as well, basically. That's almost a guarantee, because I don't think they do a manual with all-wheel drive in anything recently. But so the transmission part of the leaked document has a question mark next to the transmission there, but clearly it's going to be automatic if it's all-wheel drive. And Production, if it is truly supposed to start in just a few months, means that we should be seeing an official debut of the M3 CS very, very soon here. And so it's going to be very cool to hear that. But enjoy those gas-powered M models while you can, because there's a new report here from BMW blog this week that claims that their people familiar with the matter have told them that the current generation of the X3 M will be the last one powered by gas. And they said that the next-gen M version will be electric only when it supposedly debuts around 2026 or 2027. So sounds like you still have plenty of time to buy a brand new X3 M with a gas engine. But and supposedly also the regular X3 for the next generation will offer a gas option still. But I guess for the performance thing, they're going to want to raise that bar, and instead of doing some type of new motor, which obviously doesn't make much sense in this coming electric era, they're just going to be only electric for the performance versions. There's also talks that the X4 for the next generation will not have a gas option. I think they're just doing the gas X3 because it's such a mainstream thing, and they don't want to force people into the electric for that. But for all the sportier stuff, it's going to be electric only here. And so yeah, we'll see if the next gen M3 and M4 have the same fate. My guess would be yes, but, I don't think there's been any kind of lines drawn in the sand for those yet. We'll have to see. But anyway, very interesting to hear that. One vehicle that won't be going electric just yet is the 2024 next generation Toyota Tacoma. Even though an electric Tacoma concept was shown earlier this year, but the Fastlane truck reported in a new video this week that their insider source revealed that 2 engines will be offered for the next gen Tacoma, and one will be electrified, but it won't be fully electric. And so supposedly, like other recent Toyotas here, it'll drop the V6 and switch to the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder turbo as the standard engine, just like in the Highlander. So, we've been seeing that that's going to be the transition for everything. Expect that for the Camry, for the next generation version of that. Anything that has a V6 right now, expect it to go away and have this 2.4 liter turbo replacing it. That's pretty much a given, I think, at this point. And so we'll see if the specs change, as they swap this motor into a truck. But in the Highlander, it does 265 horsepower and 309 pound-feet of torque. The optional setup, they say, will be the 2.4-liter turbo hybrid that debuted in the new Lexus RX 500 that I just had for a week. And it's also featured in the Crown with a little less power. So if it copies the Crown, that's a safer bet since it's a Toyota and probably won't get the Lexus tune. If it ends up with that, it'll mean it'll do 340 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque, and that's a punchy setup. I mean, even in the RX 500, which is probably heavier than a Tacoma, it's a strong setup, and so it'll be a great motor, I think, for the Tacoma. We'll see. Only time will tell if it's going to be able to be bulletproof like the current Tacomas are, but I think that Toyota knows people buy their stuff for long durability, so I think they've hopefully, done the testing to make sure that this, is going to be a long longevity motor. So anyway, along with this stuff, TFL also claims that it'll get a new Trail Hunter trim, which is going to be a more rugged setup than even the TRD Pro. And that branding of Trail Hunter already debuted at SEMA on some custom builds and just kind of was like a teaser of like, hey, we got this coming. And, we haven't seen, I don't think, any production Trail Hunter trims yet, but I think that maybe the Tacoma will debut that here next year. And it sounds like the new Tacoma should finally be debuting here in 2023 sometime. So hopefully we don't have too long to wait for more details on that. But interesting to hear that from the Fastlane truck. Ford this week also revealed the final ultimate track-only version of the Ford GT supercar. And so we already saw the final street legal version not too long ago, and Ford claimed that the GT Mark II was the ultimate track version back in 2019, but here we are with the GT Mark IV, which is truly the final race-ready version of the Ford GT and the ultimate one. So they say. It's named after the 1967 model and gets some big changes here. So the wheelbase is longer, as is the body that now has a longer carbon fiber tail and other aero tweaks. The bumpers are new too, and even the headlights are thrown out and replaced by only LED accent lights here. The engine also gets pumped up, with Ford only revealing that it'll be doing over 800 horsepower and feature larger displacement, but they didn't say how much larger. It's paired up to a racing transmission and a revised suspension setup, of course, as well. And there's no other details yet for this except for the production numbers and the price. So 67 of these will be built, and they'll cost $1.7 million each. And deliveries will begin next spring to the lucky buyers that apply and are chosen to actually, be able to buy one of these things for $1.7 million. Crazy stuff, but I'm sure that's going to be a very fun track toy. And moving on here to some more normal stuff. If you watch the updates regularly, you'll probably remember that I talked about the Volvo XC90 a few weeks back, and when that was revealed, Volvo also teased a smaller electric crossover in the shadows here. So we now know the name of that crossover thanks to a new interview that Volvo's CEO did with Automotive News Europe, where he referred to it as the EX30. And so, according to the interview, it'll be a new entry-level Volvo and will be part of the Care by Volvo subscription service. It'll be on the same SEE platform that underpins the Smart Number 1, which is a European EV we don't get here in the States. And so if it ends up being around the same size as that Smart, that'll make it about 7 inches shorter than the XC40. Because it is so small, I wouldn't count on it coming to the United States here. This is Automotive News Europe talking to them. So this is, I'm assuming, just, info for Europe. Everyone's always saying how Americans want enormous vehicles and they can't do anything small over here. So, I'm guessing we won't get this, but we'll see. And so, anyway, the idea about this, also not being very American friendly is further emphasized by the fact that the CEO said that the EX30 will offer multiple battery options so a customer can choose the range that best fits their lifestyle and their budget, which to me just sounds very un-American these days, considering it seems like everyone expects every electric vehicle to have over 300 miles of range, even though they only drive 30 miles to work and back every day. But everyone wants a ton of range, so it sounds very European to be like, oh, I'll just buy enough range to get me by. Like, no one does that in America. So anyway, it could do a lot of range still, though, with the big battery and the Smart being 66 kilowatt hours, and combined with front-wheel drive, and that it'll do 268 horsepower and up to 273 miles of range on the easier WLTP cycle. But, we'll see if that, again, changes for the Volvo here or not. But that's all we know for now. It'll be debuting next year, and it'll also begin production in China next year. So coming fairly quickly here. So we'll see if we end up getting it or not. But yeah, definitely don't hold your breath for that one. Another vehicle in the Geely group here that is in development and will probably come to the United States is the new Lotus sedan that'll be electric and challenge the Porsche Taycan. So based on the new spy pictures that were just posted to Chinese social media sites, it appears that many of the styling cues from the Elantra SUV will be carrying over here. And the styling should be pretty close to being finished as well, because Autocar claims it'll arrive in 2023. So they don't have much time to mess with the styling if they are planning to. And so the Lotus managing director actually told Autocar in an interview recently that while it will share some components, it's likely to share more with the Elantra compared to the other stuff that on that Geely platform, like the Polestar 5 is going to be on a similar, or share some components, probably with this thing. But he did confirm that the 592 horsepower is where we're starting at, but there's more to come for future electric Lotuses. So definitely sounds Taycan level if, 592 horsepower is the base version. He added that it will be Lotus ethos in that car. It's a bit more refined, further towards the luxury end of what we're trying to do with our performance luxury brand. But yeah, so hopefully, the driving dynamics do, live up to what Lotus fans are expecting and hoping for. Obviously, it's going to be heavy, but they're going to have a bunch of, advanced technology to hopefully make it handle really well and all that. So hopefully, it ends up being a success for Lotus, but interesting to, hear and see that. Another very expensive sedan that apparently is living up to buyer expectations, at least so far, is the Cadillac Celestiq. So even though, a lot of people scoffed at the idea of a $300,000 Cadillac and, everyone's saying, oh, it's going to be a flop, who's going to want that? Apparently, Cadillac knew what they were doing, and they say demand is much stronger than GM expected. The Celestiq's chief engineer was on the Autoline podcast this week and said, we already have quite a few hand raisers, like many, many more than we're going to be able to build in the first year or 18 months. And he did note that because they're hand assembled and so bespoke, they said they'll maybe be able to build like 400 in the first year. So it sounds like, maybe they only have like 500 or over 500, hand raisers here, and they might not all follow through and order one, but it was like an extensive inquiry process to actually, be a hand raiser for that. It wasn't just a $100 deposit or something. Like, it was like a legit thing. So I would assume that most of these people will follow through. But, it's still, the fact that they're sold out for at least the first year is solid. And again, everyone saying, oh, this thing's going to flop. Clearly it won't, at least not for a while. And so the fact that it's coming out of the gate being such a hot seller and, having a long wait list already, It's very, very good and encouraging. And I was really impressed with the Celestiq. Seeing it in person, I did a video on it, it is wild. And honestly, I think it'll just have high demand for the fact that it's going to have the Ultra Cruise technology where it'll be basically hands-free aside from, maybe pulling into your driveway and maybe in parking situations. But other than that, it seems like it's going to basically be hands-free for most driving circumstances, which is as close to autonomous cars as you're going to get in a while. So, I think that alone, if you got a bunch of money to spend and, you want to not drive yourself, Celestiq is the only game in town right now. And I think for that reason alone, there's probably going to be a long wait list of people who can, afford to pay that price. So anyway, very cool and great to hear that's a success so far. And lastly, it sounds like the Jeep Cherokee will be discontinued, at least temporarily. And this is kind of a surprise. But Stellantis confirmed to Business Insider this week that the factory in Illinois that builds the Cherokee will be idled in February and that indefinite layoffs will happen as a result, meaning there's no timeline for when that factory will be back up and running. And when they were asked about a timeline by Business Insider, Stellantis responded that the company also is working to identify other opportunities to repurpose the Belvidere facility and has no additional details to share at this time. And their official explanation for idling this plant is supposedly due to increasing costs related to the electrification of the automotive market, which seemed confusing at first, but thankfully Reuters did some digging, and they had a report, and they were actually able to talk to the shop chairman of the United Auto Workers Union for that location, who said that company documents show that the Cherokee production will actually be moving to a Stellantis factory in Toluca, Mexico. And so now it makes sense. It's like, okay, well, if electrification stuff's eating into their budget for, other stuff, then, move Cherokee production to Mexico, makes it cheaper than Illinois, and that frees up some money. That, makes a little more sense now with their justification. Now, there's still a lot of questions. Are they just going to transplant, the factory stuff straight to Mexico and they're going to build this current generation, or are they going to, time this around a transition for a next generation version? Because it's certainly due for a new generation version. So whether that will be the one that, makes the switch or what, but it sounds like they said they're building 2023s now and they will build them up through the end of February. But then after that, it's going to be a drought of Cherokees probably for a while because there's no word about any kind of next generation version. I don't think we've seen any spy shots of a next gen version yet. So it sounds like there will be a gap between when they end Cherokee production and when it finally returns, maybe in a year or two or more. We'll have to see. But Jeep spokesperson told Car and Driver that the segment is very important to us and we plan to stay committed to it long term. So it sounds like, that is something that, they're not just going to abandon it, at least not the segment. Maybe they'll abandon the name, but they won't abandon the segment, and, they will have something new here at some point down the road. So interesting to hear that. And lastly, I want to thank all of you who are members of the Maran Motoring Club. We didn't have any new members join this week, but I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to member Mark Noble for being a member for many, many months now. I really appreciate the support, Mark, and I also appreciate the comments every week in the weekly updates. I really, really appreciate your support, and I just hope that you're still enjoying all the perks, and I very much appreciate, everyone who comments. I do pay attention. I read comments, and I see the people that comment every week, and I really do appreciate everyone that does. And so anyway, if you also would like to become a member like Mark and others, there will be a join button here on the channel page and on the video page, as well as also a link in the description. You can always join that way. And but anyway, that's it as far as all the news this week, guys. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.